Hey everybody, this is Blake here, and welcome to my review of Scary Movie 5. Now, I didn't dread the release of this as much as everybody else did, primarily because I've always kind of liked spoof films. I like to say that I'm in an abusive relationship with them. They're never good. I know they're unhealthy for me, but part of me just finds some sick, twisted pleasure in watching them. And I think what happens is my brain just doesn't process the bad parts, so I completely forget about those while retaining the decent parts. So, like a week after I see something such as Epic Movie, I'll think, yeah, I enjoyed it somewhat. I don't remember too much bad about it. And then I'll watch it again, and suddenly those bad memories will come flooding back in, and I'll feel so ashamed for feeling that way. But it happens. We all have our vices. My guilty pleasure is bad spoof films. Ouch. But what made Scary Movie more respectable than those is it is an actual movie. It follows the rules that all narratives are supposed to follow, even if it is a parody. So that makes it comparable to Mel Brooks films, even if it's not as good as some of those. Whereas a lot of the sequels, they'd become more like a series of sketches, and same with the imitations. They're more just a series of sketches that are loosely connected to each other instead of having an actual narrative. Uh, Now, Scary Movie definitely did have some foreshadowing going on. It had some of the problems that the imitations and sequels would both exploit and roll with, even though they're the weakest link of Scary Movie, in that it does have some pop culture references that have aged very badly, and it spoofs shit that it's not supposed to be spoofing. I do not want to see Matrix parodies in my Scary Movie parody, but what can you do? I didn't mind it in Scary Movie as much as I didn't like the trend that it would start, where all the spoof films would start really heavily relying on pop culture references, and they wouldn't even try to spoof what they're supposed to be spoofing, like Disaster Movie. Fuck Disaster Movie so much. Um, but the franchise pretty much ran its course. For the most part, the sequels weren't very good, but they had their moments to where I can say I enjoy them somewhat. Scary Movie 2 is a train wreck, but when it works, I think it works pretty well. And I like the cast enough that they're able to carry it, even if the majority of the plot of that film ended up in the deleted scenes section. Don't know how that works. And then Scary Movie 3 was much more juvenile. It was more silly. It was much more PG-13, whereas the previous two films were hard R. But, at least it once again had a really good cast, and they actually had some material to work with. I remember some of George Carlin's lines being pretty funny, like, my daughter was evil, so my wife threw her down a well. I personally would have sufficed with a simple timeout, but that kind of stuff cracked me up. Scary Movie 4, on the other hand, it just kind of felt like they ran out of ideas. It wasn't very funny, but it wasn't very obnoxious either. Scary Movie 3 was very uneven. Scary Movie 4 was just kind of flat. It had a couple of amusing chuckles here and there. Like, I liked Michael Madsen's cameo. His lines, such as, our tripods will have four legs, and the whole men riding dragons throwing wolves at maggots line always made me smile. But otherwise, very few groans, very few laughs. So it seemed like the franchise was dead in the water. In fact, spoofs in general became less profitable. Even like Vampire Suck and Disaster Movie underperformed compared to their predecessors. So it seemed like we wouldn't have to endure a Scary Movie 5. But then it happened, and nobody was happy about it. I wasn't dreading it quite as much, even though I was a little saddened to see that Anna Faris wasn't going to be returning. I'm not a huge fan of hers, but I always felt that she understood this franchise pretty well and always made pretty good leads in them, even if I can't stand her in anything else. But then I saw the trailer for this fucker, and oh my god, it looks so obnoxious. Here's the thing. Most comedies, they use their funniest parts in the trailer. So, Scary Movie 3 and Scary Movie 4 look like they could be amusing based on the trailers. But in this case, I thought the trailers just looked bad. I had no desire to see it after witnessing those trailers. Yeah, I knew I'd have to find the strength and go and watch it. And you know what? It's not as bad as the trailers suggest. Primarily because most of the footage that appears in the trailers doesn't actually appear in the movie. I hate it when films do that, but maybe it was for the better, maybe it was for the worse, because some of the scenes they replaced those sequences with were not very good either. So for example, that scene where Charlie Sheen is getting pulled into the door, growing first, and he says, "Don't worry, I've come back from worse than this," and before being dragged away, that doesn't appear in the actual film. Instead, there's this even more forced joke where Lindsay Lohan, she gets possessed and she says, "I'm going to blow you across the room," and he says, "That sounds awesome," but then she like literally blows him across the room, and that's the end of that scene, and that was pretty lame. Also, the Inception spoof is different. In the trailer, he says, "Put this in your mouth and the other one in your rectum," and then Simon Rex does it, and he says, "Oh, I'm sorry, put the other one in your mouth and the other one," and it goes in your rectum. That's not in it. There's a different Inception spoof. I kind of wish they kept that in because that was the only part in the trailer that did make me kind of smile. But they kind of reused that joke in another context where this girl who's kind of feral, very beastly, she's eating a popsicle, but she's actually eating the popsicle stick while holding the popsicle part in her hand. And he says, "No, the other end," and she takes that to shove it in her butt. This would have been really awkward to direct. I mean, can you imagine the director telling this girl to do this or telling her to hump this older woman's leg? That must have been really awkward because this is a really young girl. But so I didn't think that one was this. That one I think was too gross. Whereas at least they probably would have ruined it and if they went by the one they used in the trailer, because I thought what made that kind of funny was the dude's reaction, not the fact that you see him actually put the one that was just in his ass in his mouth, but or vice versa. But I was a little disappointed in that. Also, the part where the con man psychic says something like, "The demon's got my hand," when he punches the guy. There's a similar scene, but they don't really focus on the dialogue there as much, so I'm not even sure if he actually said that, but the scene was different than how it looked like it would be in the trailers. So yeah, at least the majority of the footage didn't appear in the movie, even if... Oh yeah, another thing that they cut out is when all the pans start dropping on Simon Rex's head. In the trailer he says, "That's a lot of pans." In the movie, even though that same scene happens, he doesn't say that. He just keeps getting beaten up. Once again, I almost wish they kept that in because that actually resembles a joke, whereas they don't even try in the finished product. So yeah, now I'm going to have to be a little bit criticky here. One of the things that bothered me was that the narrative has no focus. You'd think that they're primarily spoofing Paranormal Activity based on the trailers. No, believe it or not, the main template for this movie is Mama. Yes, the plot resembles Mama's. And I haven't seen Mama, so I missed a lot of the jokes probably. Like I was presuming the part where they used a toy car in place of a real car was taken off something from Mama. I don't know, but it made no sense in the context of the movie. But maybe I would have gotten it if I had seen Mama. But I'm confused because was Mama really that big of a success? I mean, the films that that the previous scary movies used as templates before were major successes. They were bandwagon builders. You had Scream, Saw, The Ring. Those were huge hits in their day. I don't remember Mama being quite the success, but okay. Then Paranormal Activity is also spoofed quite a bit. It's sort of like, imagine the story of Mama framed as a Paranormal Activity movie. Even though it's not, found footage, they have the same deal with the security cam set up all throughout the house and stuff like that. But, so, okay, that's fine. If you want to keep that as your plot, I'm not going to object. But then they have these reoccurring subplots with Black Swan and Rise of the Planet of the Apes. Now, I don't mind how that's used in theory. Pretty much the main chick, she's auditioning for the role of Black Swan, and the main guy, he works at a lab that's experimenting on apes, just like Rise of the Planet of the Apes. But, if that was just one scene that they used for each of those, I would have been okay. But no, they're very reoccurring subplot. They keep going back to this Black Swan thing or this Rise of the Planet of the Apes things, but then they don't really tie those stories into the main story. So it really came across as disjointed. And a lot of the jokes, what's weird is they'll like set them up, but then they don't pay them off. There's no payoff. I don't know why I said it like that. But so for example, there's this part where Terry Crews, who's Simon Rex's boss, he's walking these suits through this laboratory and this Rise of the Planet of the Apes parody, and he says that 99% of the apes that were put through this drug became aggressive sexual predators. So immediately I'm thinking there's going to be some really retarded gag where the apes rape somebody, probably Terry Crews, but then it never happens. So why even set that up? Another one is there's this Evil Dead spoof, which I actually kind of liked at first, even though they started reusing the same footage over and over again, where they find this book and they're reading these cursed words, and it causes everybody in the cabin to go insane, and they keep going back and forth with that, and they're not seeing anything happen, so they presume that nothing is happening, and they mention later on that on the way back they kept repeating the words over and over again, and nothing was continuing to happen. So I presumed that they're going to cut to a scene like a whole neighborhood block is going crazy. Once again, never happens. So they kind of wasted that. And yet they have these throwaway gags that have no context whatsoever, like they spoof both Sinister and Honey Boo Boo in the same joke, where the Simon Rex, he's having a dream sequence where just, Honey Boo Boo comes out of a box and says something I couldn't even understand. It's what you see in the trailers. But they don't really mention that scene again. It's just kind of thrown in there for no reason. So either cut these jokes out completely or don't set them up at all. I will give it credit, at least with the Evil Dead spoof. I have no idea how they spoofed that, considering they got some of the plot points right and some of the locations right that they couldn't have gotten just from the trailers. So considering the movie just came out like a week ago, I have no idea how they got that information. Maybe they got an early screening or they walked on the set. I have no idea, but I have to respect them at least for doing that. There are some amusing moments. I thought some of the lines were kind of clever, even though I don't remember any of them. That's another bad thing. I can remember various quotes from the previous Scary movies. I even said a few earlier on, I believe. But I can't quote anything from Scary Movie 5. All I remember is that I said to my dad that there were some funny parts. So I guess that's not a good thing either. I did like the narration. I don't know who was doing it, but they were doing a very good Morgan Freeman impersonation. There were some funny moments with that. There are some parts where I started to laugh, but then they immediately ruin it. Like early on, there's this. The opening scene is Charlie Sheen and Lindsay Lohan are about to make a sex tape, and she's saying, I don't want to make a sex tape, and he's saying, oh, these aren't sex tapes. That kind of stuff started to be funny, but then they started playing that fucking Benny Hill music. Oh my gosh, video reviewing has ruined that for me. Now, I've never been a huge fan of it to begin with, but at least like in the early days when the Nostalgia Critic or the Cinema Snob would do something like that, it was kind of amusing, but then everybody else started taking it so far to where every time it showed up, I'd hate it. So when they do it in this movie, and it seems to go on forever, I just wanted to kill myself. Or more. Actually, I probably should say I wanted to kill whoever made this movie, and then I realized how stupid that is because it is just a movie, but whatever. I did not like that. And in fact, a lot of the gags do go on for quite some time, and they are pretty lazy. Like, there's a scene with Snoop Dogg, and he's with somebody else, and they're kind of bickering. He's like, we got to go hide in the cabin in the woods, like that horror movie. Which one? Friday the 13th? No, the one with the cabin in the woods. And they keep going on for what felt like 5 minutes. I'd also like to know where all this lowbrow urban humor is coming from. Like one of the first scenes is Snoop Dogg and that other guy getting a joint, and then they have the stereotype black con man preacher. I'm not sure what they're spoofing there, and maybe it's kind of a tradition with the Scary Movie films. It made sense with the earlier Scary Movies because that was always been sort of a trait of the Wayans brothers. They always bring in lowbrow urban humor that relies on a lot of stereotypes and stuff like that, and mixes in with whatever they're parodying. I thought they did it fine, but here it's like they dabble in it, but not enough for it to really make sense. Whatever. I'm looking into this way too deeply. I did miss some of the gags, like they make fun of 50 Shades of Grey at one point, and I had no clue what was going on. And it's this dream sequence, and you have Jerry O'Connell and Mike Tyson show up, and they start getting in kind of a fight, and then suddenly Jerry O'Connell's hanging from chains, and it's just really weird, and they have to show the actual book, 50 Shades of Grey, so you can get it. Kind of lazy, but at least then I understood that I at least understood what they were making fun of then. But yeah, that was pretty bad. There's definitely a feeling that they were maybe writing this as they were going along because just certain subplots kind of flounder around, and they don't really know what to do with certain characters like Terry Crews. That guy is funny. I want to see him be a lead in an action movie, in an action comedy, but instead he's doing shit like this, and that shames me. But yeah, that's really it. Would I say it's awful? No, it had enough amusing moments that I didn't hate myself for watching it as I was watching it, but it's not good either. It's just kind of a wreck, but at least it's better than Disaster Movie. A Disaster Movie to me is the lowest of the low. I hate that movie so much, and this is God compared to that. I'd also say I liked it a little bit more than A Haunted House. A Haunted House was it had a stronger narrative, only in that it had a very streamlined plot, but at the same time, it was very slow paced. I don't think you could parody slow burn suspense films without being slow burn yourself. So that kind of was boring, whereas this one is much more faster paced. More stuff is going on, but it's also kind of stupider. So I'd say I probably like this a little bit more than A Haunted House, but not by much. If you loved all the scary movie films, then you might as well see this. Whether it's as a rental or in the theaters is your choice. But if you didn't like them, don't watch this. You're just going to hate yourself for it afterwards. Or if you're like me and you're kind of split in the middle where you sort of enjoy them even though they're bad, I just say wait for a rental. I want to see this franchise die off. It's become embarrassing by this point. But you know what? Might be a little bit better than Scary Movie 4. Maybe not. See, when I saw Scary Movie 4 for the first time, I disliked it full on. But when I watched it again like a week ago on TV, I didn't mind it as much. Maybe this will be different. So maybe I'll say, yeah, this is weaker than Scary Movie 4. But if I watch it again when it comes out on TV, I might flip flop. So yeah, that's all I have to say. Now for my favorite part, the plugins. I did written reviews of Stakeland, which I believe should be up by now. Slaughter in the Snow, a samurai film, even though I know that the main character is actually a Ronin. Be sure to check out my newest Kick-Ass of Awesome episode on Shaolin Temple. I put a lot of work into that, and it's kind of been a flop so far. Nobody's watched it, but I'm proud of that. So please give that a look. And that is all. I'll see you guys later.